The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. A few different stories to talk about today. Let's start first, maybe just because we are going to be talking about Pat's upcoming vacation, which will be eclipse related. We do have a story about the upcoming eclipse, which will be happening in a lot of the United States. It'll be visible on August 21st, solar eclipse. There's an interesting article about whether the eclipse might make animals act strangely. And there's both anecdotal evidence and a few scientific studies which suggest that, yes, when the moon moves between the sun and the earth and casts this solar eclipse, there will be, it's sort of like a twilight. It doesn't actually get dark like night. I remember from when I witnessed a close to full solar eclipse when I was in 6th grade, I believe.
So you weren't completely in the path of totality, but maybe something like 90% there?
I think we basically were, but that's what I think a lot of people believe if you're on the 100% line that it's like nighttime, but it's not. There's still sort of the glow around the sun that is still visible, and some light still gets to the earth.
Yep.
So it feels very much like twilight. And the idea is that animals do alter their behavior. And this is not altogether unprecedented in the sense that very often there are animals that can sense earthquakes before humans can sense them. There are weather events that animals can react to. Different animals have very pronounced senses of either hearing or smell or whatever the case may be. So it's not hugely surprising that an eclipse might make animals act a little bit funky.
Well, I think it's interesting because, I mean, if you witness these animals, if they're like large farm animals, they'll start lying down, or the chickens will come home to roost, or the crickets will start chirping. And it just, it makes you believe that it's not based on just the length of a day. It's based on actually, how bright it is outside.
Sure.
And it's surprising, too, that these animals aren't thinking, wait, the day's already up? I mean, it's only been like 6 hours. How is it already nighttime?
Yeah,
How's it time to go to sleep already?
And certainly animals do have sort of like an internal sense of time because, like, for example, when my dad's dog starts to walk around and sort of look like he's expecting a dental bone, it's not based on how much light there is outside.
Yeah.
It's because he sort of starts to get the sense that it's close to dinner time. Dinner time is when he puts himself in his crate and usually is rewarded with a treat, right? And depending on the time of year, it could be dark or it could be light, right? Because that's usually around 7 o'clock. In Massachusetts, it could be totally night at that time. It could be totally light at that time. So there is some internal clock that animals have, but at the same time, these external factors definitely affect them.
And they're in that routine every day. So that's why I think it's a little bit surprising that they don't have like a second thought about going to bed quite yet. And even if you're in the path of totality, the full eclipse only lasts about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. So you'd think that they'd be able to take their time for a little bit and say, I don't have to go to sleep quite yet. I can stay up a little bit longer.
I mean, hey, humans are going to act weirdly also because of the eclipse. You're going to have people converging on this line that will stretch an imaginary line between Charleston and Seattle, roughly, a sort of diagonal line across the United States, to look at the sky for what is going to be a 2-minute event. That's not exactly the typical behavior for humans either.
Imagine what this was like, 100, 200 years ago when they didn't even know that the solar eclipse was coming.
Or longer.
Say you lived in like some small village and you're out in the farm somewhere and all of a sudden, the chickens start going home to roost and the crickets start chirping and the animals start lying down and it just goes dark. I mean, how do you explain that if it's 12 o'clock in the middle of the day?
That's how you get religion.
Yeah, that's how you get religion, spirituality. That's how you get your beliefs confirmed, I guess.
Yeah. So we'll have more information about how this eclipse relates to Pat's upcoming trip on the Friday bonus show when we will talk about vacation plans and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Actually, I'm not supposed to say blah, blah, blah anymore. I've been told that it's sort of like I use it interchangeably with etc., but a number of people have said I shouldn't use it anymore. So I'm going to try to avoid it.
Because they just don't like how it sounds?
They don't like it. Yeah, people don't like it. And I am a man of the people. So I will try to do what the people want, at least a handful of people that emailed me. Okay, controversy at a transgender camp. The Center for Trans Youth Health and Development at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, that's the full name of it. It started about a decade ago with 40 patients, as they call them. It now has over 900 people. And some of those individuals are as young as 3 or 4 years old. And this has created some significant controversy. And the gist of the controversy is, even if you are gender affirmative and supportive of people living their lives as the gender with which they identify. Is 3 or 4 too young to really know whether someone is feeling as though their gender identity differs from the biological sex they were born with, to the degree that you would want to put them in something that is a trans youth camp? That's more or less the controversy here.
Well, I think, I mean, it's not like going to a camp has any long-lasting repercussions. I mean, if you feel like at, you know, the age of 4 that your sex doesn't match your gender identity, and you decide in a few years later that you had it wrong, what does it matter in the end? I mean, maybe there's some social consequences from that where people may tease you, but they were going to tease you anyway if your sex doesn't match your gender.
I guess the argument is, and I'm not defending this, I'm unsure about this, but the argument would be, if you have someone that is 4 years old and the parents perceive that maybe they seem to feel that their gender identity does not match their birth sex, it's too early to put them in an environment where they will effectively be treated as though that is 100% definitively what they're feeling, when it might not be, and you might end up pushing someone or convincing someone that that's the reality, when if it were not for this camp, in 6 months they realize, you know what, actually I feel like my gender identity does match my birth genitalia. Now, the counter to that would be...
The opposite can be true as well.
The opposite could be true as well. The counter to which is, if you don't get placed in an environment that is affirming of your gender identity or welcoming of it in some way, that you will live your entire life never recognizing it.
Or you keep telling these kids that, hey, you're a boy, you're going to act like a boy, you're going to dress like a boy, and when they grow up, they could have, you know, some health issues, you know, with their mentality when they're older.
Now, the counter to this is what? The counter is, well, you're not going to be coerced into living as a different, with a different gender identity, in the same way that it's not possible to convince someone that they're gay if they're not gay. And that's a pretty fair argument, right? Which is, if you send someone to, you know, a gay camp, gay youth camp or something like that, and they say, you know what, actually, I don't feel that I'm gay, they're not going to be convinced to live their life as a gay person as a result of being in the camp. But I do understand I'm actually sensitive to the general disagreement as to whether there is a certain age at which we can more definitively say, this is definitely the way that this person wants to live their life, as opposed to, we're just not sure yet. I believe that this is a difficult issue, and I don't actually know the answer.
Especially when you talk about kids, and maybe, you know, there's like hormone therapy that could be involved, some surgeries. I mean, usually we think of you have to be 18 before you can have any lasting change to your body, cosmetically or otherwise, or at least have the permission of your parents. But the problem with that is, I mean, in order to get the full and best effects of a gender transformation, that has to happen before puberty, at least to get the top effects. Yeah. And, you know, that's when you're like 12, 13 years old.
Right. And that is also the subject of much controversy. So anyway, that's what's going on. There is controversy around this camp, and I don't know ultimately whether anybody is seeking sort of like injunctive relief as to the existence of this camp and involving 4-year-olds, but it is a discussion.
I just think it's good that they have a space where they're not going to be bullied, I guess. And, you know, this seems to be a significant problem. Not surprising that it's happening in the Bay Area. Yeah. Because they're such a progressive...
Or isn't this L.A.? It's California, but I thought it was
it's the Bay
Los
Area.
Angeles. Okay, maybe it is. Maybe it's organized by the Los Angeles hospital in the Bay Area, though. Sure. They go up the coast or something. Anyway, it's definitely California. That we can be sure of. There's video of a man running down a sidewalk of the busy Putney Bridge in London, England, and there's a red bus several feet behind him on the road. There's a woman walking in the opposite direction towards a subway station at the end of the bridge, and just as the man and woman are about to pass each other, the jogger, with one swift motion of his right arm, shoves the woman towards the road into the path of the oncoming bus, and he keeps running. The woman's upper body is dangling in front of the bus. The bus driver manages to swerve out of the way and narrowly misses the woman. And this was captured on video. And London Metro Police released the video this week. This happened about 3 months ago in the morning of May 5th. And investigators have still been unable to find the jogger. So now they're putting out the video hoping that citizens, I guess you wouldn't have to be a citizen, but the public, I guess is the right word.
And they're in the UK, so they'd be subjects to begin with.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
If you're in the UK because they have
You're a
a
subject.
monarchy, you're a subject
Yeah.
and not a citizen. I did
Yes.
not know that. Anyway, police want help finding this individual. What a weird thing, right? I mean, I guess at this point, if it was someone known to the woman, presumably she would have said that at this point. Although maybe she didn't get a good look at the guy. I don't know. I assume she did, and it's not someone that's known to the victim.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's just a case of jogging rage, right? Because she seemed to have been in his path,
Oh,
even
you
though
think that's what
he's
it
the
is?
person traveling much faster and just coming onto the scene. So it's his responsibility to get out of the way.
Yeah. The strange thing is though that there in the video you can see that ahead of the woman there was another man walking. So
Right.
if the issue was merely that the jogger didn't like the path,
No, but I think he was just outside of the path.
Okay.
Where he was able to run right through. And I think he had this this target of I'm just going to get through this area.
I was in London in December and I did notice that at tourist attractions there are both tourists and locals alike that get really annoyed by people blocking the sidewalks. And I'm totally sensitive to that. When I lived in New York City and I'm trying to commute on the subway to my office, and there are tourists standing right at the bottom of the one set of stairs that
Yeah.
you need to walk up to get out of the subway station, people start to get very annoyed. You're slowing down a potential dozens or potentially hundreds of people every single 30 seconds that you are standing there. Would I shove someone into the subway tracks as a result? No, I wouldn't. So I think that this probably has to be more than just sort of jogger's rage or something.
Yeah, well,
along
this is
those
like
lines.
attempted murder because he's actually pushing her into traffic. I mean, I get mad too when someone pulls over in a bike lane, or when someone causes gridlock, or when you're just approaching a street where a bunch of individuals just kind of hanging around.
Yeah.
And they're just being oblivious to their surroundings, and
I can't
you need a
stand it.
path to get through that.
I get it. I
It's
get it.
annoying, but you can't assault someone for that.
I completely agree with you. And here in Boston, it's very common. There are bike lanes in different parts of the city. And there are parts of the city where the bike lane as a sort of individual lane disappears. And you have the rightmost lane on typically a road that's 2 lanes in either direction. The rightmost lane has the little bike icons painted on the road. And in those areas, cars and bikes are supposed to sort of share space until the bike lane opens up individually
Share
again.
the road.
Share the road. And those areas create constant drama. People on bikes yelling at drivers, dangerous situations where drivers may not realize that even though that this is a regular car lane, that it is also supposed to be shared with bicyclists, and they get mad and believe the bicyclists are supposed to be off to the side, even though in those areas you're actually supposed to just go in a single file, right? I'm totally supportive of bike lanes. I just do worry that when you have a densely populated area with bike lanes and different forms of bike lanes, separate bike lanes that in some areas actually are supposed to be over on a bike path that might be completely separate from the road, and then areas where they're sharing space. People do get killed on bikes in cities, and part of it, I think, is the various formats of bike lanes that exist.
I think the right move here, and this is what Boston's starting to do, is to move the bike lane so it's right next to the sidewalk, and in between, the car traffic and the foot traffic, you can have like a parking lane.
Yeah. So let me see if I can explain it a
they
different
don't
way.
get caught. Yeah.
So instead of putting the bike lane between car traffic and where people park on the side of the road,
Right.
you move the bike lane into a space between the parked cars and the edge of the sidewalk.
Yeah,
so
that was much better.
You basically create a channel between the front of parked cars, or back, I guess, if you were backing in, and the sidewalk, and you're sort of protecting the bicyclists with the parked cars in a way.
Yeah, because at no point do the cars ever have to cross the bike lane either to turn,
Right.
maybe to turn, but not to park. And it also would cut down on the car door incidents where someone just leaving their car after parking will just open the door and a bicyclist coming by can crash into it.
Yeah, and that's assuming that usually you would use front in angle parking.
Yeah.
To avoid, because if you have like parallel parking situation, you could still have doors opening on the passenger side,
Sure.
or on a one-way road on the driver's side as well. We're sort of getting into the minutia here. In any case, bike lanes, I'm supportive of them. It has nothing to do whatsoever with this incident in London, which is horrible, and I hope to find the guy. I believe they will find the guy.
Well, if she was pushed into a bike lane, I think if the calamity would have been much less. If she was just ran over by a bike compared to a car.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure the relevance of that particular fact or hypothesis, but I think you're probably probably right about that. Okay, check out the video. If you know this man, help the police identify him.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.